All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're cracking open a pretty complex case file from a place called Shoalhaven in Australia. This is a story that's all about one citizen's really determined fight to hold their local government accountable. It's about transparency, it's about power, and it's about what happens when somebody decides to, watch the watchers.
This quote right here, it just perfectly sets the stage for everything we're about to unpack. It really asks the big question. What happens when a local government starts caring more about politics than about, public service? Let's see how this whole thing played out.
So where does this story even begin? It starts with a project called Eye on Shoalhaven Council. Now, this is basically a one-man operation run by a local guy who actually has a background as a law enforcement investigator. He just decided that his community needed someone on the outside looking in to make sense of what was happening with their local government.
And this quote, this is his whole philosophy in a nutshell. It comes straight from his investigative background. The idea isn't just to report on something once and walk away. It's to apply steady, fact-based pressure. Because the belief is, if you keep at it, the truth, it's gotta come out eventually.
This whole thing is a textbook example of a pretty fundamental concept, citizen oversight. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's when everyday people, not the government, step up to monitor public institutions, asking the hard questions to make sure these bodies are actually accountable to the people they're supposed to be serving.
So what was the spark that lit this whole fire? It all came down to a single, really controversial decision, the hiring of a new council CEO. This one move set off a chain reaction of public concern and really put a spotlight on questions about fairness and conflicts of interest.
Okay, let's walk through exactly how this went down. First, you have the mayor chairing the hiring panel. Then, she declares what she calls a non-significant conflict of interest because she's known one of the candidates for over 20 years. Okay. Next, the vote among the councilors ends in a tie, and that leads to the final step. The mayor uses her special casting vote, basically a tiebreaker, to give the job to that same person she's known for decades. You can see why that sequence of events raised some eyebrows.
And the public reaction was pretty fast. The articles say that more than 179 residents signed a petition to have the mayor formally censured. Now, a censure isn't about getting fired or anything like that. Think of it as a formal public slap on the wrist, a permanent record saying that an official's actions just weren't up to snuff.
But that controversial appointment, that was really just the beginning. It pushed our citizen watchdog to start digging a lot deeper. But when he started asking for the official documents, bam, he hit a total wall of resistance. And that's what kicked off a full-blown legal battle just to get access to public records.
So this is where it gets really legal. On one side, you have the law, the JIPA Act, which basically says transparency is the default. You have to release information unless there's a very real, evidence-based reason not to. But on the other side, you have the council arguing for secrecy, saying things like it could be embarrassing or pointing to what the author might post on social media. The author's argument is that those just aren't good enough reasons under the law.
So the author is pushing back on a bunch of fronts. He's saying, look, you're just speculating about harm, you're hiding behind staff objections without showing any proof, and you're calling professional work personal information to keep it secret. He also points out that they're redacting things inconsistently and not even telling them what they're withholding, which makes it impossible to challenge.
This quote just sums up the whole legal argument perfectly. Access to information is a right, not something the government does for you as a favor. If this case succeeds, it could be a real game changer. It would mean the burden of proof shifts, and from now on, councils would have to prove why something should be secret, instead of citizens having to prove why they have a right to be curious.
As this fight over documents dragged on, the story got bigger. The articles start to paint a picture that's not just about transparency, but about a really dysfunctional culture inside the council. And the concerns got so serious that they actually triggered an official investigation from a state regulator.
And that investigation by the state's workplace safety group, it pretty much validated all those concerns. Their official report found serious psychosocial risks. Now that's a fancy bureaucratic term, but it basically means a toxic work environment, pointing to things like bullying and really bad professional relationships.
So in public, how did the CEO respond to this damning report? Well, he put out this statement saying he has a responsibility for a safe workplace and that the whole thing was a valuable opportunity to get better.
But, and this is a huge but, the source material puts that public statement right next to this one, which was reportedly said just days earlier, a threat to hunt down leaks. I mean, that sends a totally different message, right? One of fear and control. The author argues that this kind of contradiction is exactly what creates a toxic workplace.
So, as our watchdog kept digging and his scrutiny got more intense, the response allegedly got personal. Really personal. He reports that the pushback campaign stopped being about his arguments and started being about him.
He claims there was this whole orchestrated smear campaign. It involved a local counselor digging up a 27-year-old case from an industrial tribunal way back in his past career. The goal, he says, was pretty clear: damage his credibility and distract everyone from what's happening at the council right now.
So, in his articles, he sets the record straight, point by point. He says, look, the case wasn't even against me, it was against my employer. He makes it clear it was a tribunal, not a court of law, and that, in the end, there was no negative finding made against him personally. He basically says he was doing the right thing then, and he'd do it again.
The attacks also went after his methods, specifically that he was using AI to help sort through tons of council documents. So in response, he just published his ethical rule book. He's totally transparent about using it. He double-checks everything for accuracy. He makes it clear a human is still doing all the thinking and writing, and that the tech is just there to help make things clearer, not to build an argument for him.
So after all this, what's the real-world cost? I mean, what's the price of all this alleged secrecy and dysfunction? Well, the articles argue the fallout isn't just some abstract idea. It's hitting real people, the council staff, and through them, the entire community.
And the biggest consequence? It comes down to this number: 55. That's roughly how many staff redundancies are planned. We're talking about one of the biggest restructures the council has seen in a long, long time.
This chart here really lays it out visually. You see 52 positions are being cut completely, while only 12 new ones are being created. That's a huge net loss of jobs. And according to the source, this includes a lot of experienced, long-serving people, like the crews who maintain the roads.
And this brings us right back to that theme of contradiction. The articles put these two things side by side. On one hand, you have the public promises from leadership, all these nice words about respect and kindness. And on the other, you have the actions, mass redundancies, experienced staff being let go, and that earlier threat to hunt down anyone who speaks out.
We're going to end with this last thought from the source material because it's such a powerful way to wrap this all up. It argues that in any town, the people who work for it are the infrastructure. And when you start dismantling them, well, the roads aren't the only things that are going to crack. A lot to think about there.